Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream for November 11th. We are back with Organic Garage, OGGFF, OG on the TSX, Matt Lurie, the CEO, and Yossi Haber, who is the new advisor for the U.S. launch of Future of Cheese. We're going to be talking about the massive market opportunity and all that good stuff. Now, for anybody that's brand new to our program, our goal with Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream is to bring you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. So these are companies going after massive multi-billion-dollar market opportunities that are at a key inflection point and that have multiple catalysts in place that can really ignite that increase in shareholder value and stock price. And as we have seen in the recent weeks, Organic Garage has plenty of catalysts, and we're just have new ones coming up right now, including the Future of Cheese launch in the U.S. So with that said, Matt, we know who you are. Let's meet Yossi.
Hi there. Great to meet you all.
I just want to drop. Can you just tilt the camera down a little bit so we see more of you? Okay. I want us to be at the same. Okay. So we're kind of now. Okay, now we're at the same level. Okay, so you have a very interesting background. Like you essentially were a senior marketing executive with Kraft, with Danone, also with IAC. You worked with Barry Diller. So you have some incredible success stories in the consumer brand space, a dairy market, a dairy alternatives market. So can you talk about how and why did you decide to get involved with Organic Garage, Future of Cheese, and what you see as the market opportunity specifically for the U.S. market?
Well, a little bit on my background, as you mentioned, I spent quite a number of years at Kraft, as well as at Dannon, the yogurt company. I was chief marketing officer for a number of their companies in both the United States as well as Europe. I led the launch of a big product that Dannon came out with called Dannon Light. We rolled that national. That became the #1 selling yogurt in the whole country for about 10 years. I introduced the first kids yogurt in America at a time that yogurt was yogurt. If you ate Dannon, you had to mix it. If you had Yoplait, it was already mixed for you, but there was nothing specific for anybody. So I segmented that and created sort of a new category called kids yogurt, where we added.
There was never a kids yogurt before? I mean, why did you come up with kids yogurt?
25. I had been to Europe numerous times. I saw special yogurts made for kids. Kids were not big lovers of yogurt because it had that tart kind of tartness to it. So about 25 years ago, I said, well, why don't we create a product in the United States, especially for kids?
Okay.
So we would add sprinkles. We would create grape, cherry flavors, flavors and types of feel that kids would really love. So it would be like kind of a dessert. We started off thinking we'd do maybe $10 million in year one. We ended up doing $30 million in year one with Dannon.
30 with a 30.
$30 million in the first year. The product had launched to much of the rest of the world. Products called Sprinklins as well as Danimals. Danimals, I'm sure if you have kids, you're familiar with Danimals. It's out there in virtually every supermarket in the United States. Today in the United States, that category is over $1 billion. So it kind of started from these small little Dannon brands and grew into $1 billion categories.
So you created $1 billion category in this weird niche in the U.S.
Exactly. I mean, it was fun because it was for kids, but I think it turned out to be very profitable for Danone as a company. And it ended up I ended up going to London as a result to sort of run some of their brands over there in Europe.
Okay, and you've done other dairy brands also, other stuff in the market for other companies, right?
Right, correct.
Give us some examples, other case studies, success stories of essentially. What the market, I guess, look, bottom line is our audience is investors, right? So what they want to know is, what needs to happen for Future of Cheese to become let's say, just for starters, $100 million business, and then potentially $1 billion business. Can it happen? And what's the path to get there? So maybe you can share some success stories of other situations where you were, instrumental in making that happen.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question. I mean, if you just let's just talk for a moment about Future of Cheese, then I'll get into a specific case. I think that might be a little bit relevant to that. I think it's a huge opportunity, which is really why I'm so excited to be part of this team. I mean, the U.S. plant-based butter world, right, last year, according to GFI, grew by 36%. So that's now at a few $100 million, just the U.S. butter category.
And it's vegan butter or something? It's like a plant-based. It's made out of
plant-based,
okay.
all plant-based. There's no dairy ingredients, in it at all.
And this is like out of nowhere, basically.
I would say somewhat out of nowhere. I mean, it's only over the last few years. So the U.S. butter market for plant-based only is about $275 million. The U.S. cheese market in plant-based is about $270 million. And that grew at 42% last year. 42%. That's an enormous number. I mean, if you think about it from a category perspective, how many products grow by that amount in 1 year? It's pretty rare. Even yogurt, which is already more established in plant-based, they have coconut yogurts and yogurts made out of other items besides dairy. That's only growing at 20%. You know, I mean, so that's already peaked a little bit.
Okay.
When you've got butter and you've got cheese, it's incredible what's going on in that category. So that
why? Why is this happening all of a sudden?
Well, I think people are figuring out that first of all, you have the whole environmental issue going on in the world, all the geopolitical issues with things in terms of animals, in terms of health. That plant-based is better for you. It's better for the environment. I think you've got a lot of that going on.
Oh, the environment. I from what I understand is like a lot of the part of the thing for the plant-based, and I think what attracts like well, you're a marketing guy, so you probably know this better, but I think like, for example, like millennials or Gen Z, I mean, they're more environmentally conscious, right? And they're attracted by plant-based because, in theory, it's more, I guess it's more environmentally friendly than the, dairy, than actual, the animal-based milk and dairy stuff.
Absolutely.
So maybe that's another driver, yeah.
A big driver is certainly the younger, more millennial, Gen Z types. But I think it's already spilling over into some of the older people because people look at a lot of these products, even if they're dairy or even if they're a dairy alternative, they try to read the ingredients, right? And they see there's 20 ingredients. They can't even pronounce half of the ingredients, right? So they say to themselves, what is this? What am I putting into my body? I have to be concerned about. I have health issues, or I may potentially have health issues. Plant-based kind of gets around all that. And Future of Cheese, one of the great things about the Future of Cheese products is they have simple ingredients. So only 3 or 4 ingredients. And I saw that and I said, wow, it's a product that has only a number of ingredients. It actually tastes great, which a lot of the other products that are out in the marketplace don't necessarily taste great. And so I think that's a recipe for significant success, especially when you consider the fact that the company, as I'm sure you've discussed, was founded by really a chef, and a maître de fromage. This is somebody who was an expert on cheese. So the French, the French sort of expertise that France is known for, and they bestow that only on a number of people. I think ours is the first one in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, right? So to be given such a title. So it's pretty amazing when you think about it. I think also when you look at meat, you look at the plant-based meat market, Impossible Burger, and you see how these companies, have grown very significantly, and they're looking at billions of dollars worth of valuations. For me, it's a hamburger, right? And it's plant-based, and it tastes very good. But what they've done with that, if you consider that to be potentially a template for what can happen in dairy, and in dairy things are starting to move in that direction, I think you have an incredible amount of growth. And I'll give you one little example. This isn't plant-based, but you asked about companies that I've worked with. I do a lot of consulting, in strategic marketing and in value proposition and in digital strategic marketing. I worked with this is a real dairy company a number of years ago. The company was doing about $15 million. I came in, sort of looked at the situation, looked at the competitive situation, wrote the first marketing plan, helped them execute some of this over the next couple of years. And the business went from 18 million to 75 million in less than 2 years. And then it was sold off to private equity for 225 million or something like that. So this was really a small startup, a farmer, someone from overseas who got together, put this together. And in a few years, it was a $225 million sale to a private equity firm. So if you look at that, and that was just another dairy product. I think they tasted better, yes.
What was it exactly?
Company's called Noosa yogurt. Noosa is a regular.
So it was a yogurt.
Regular yogurt. It's a regular. It's Australian. If you Greek is the big thing, right? For many years, but Australian sort of came along. This was the first Australian yogurt.
Okay.
Rich, creamy. It's got the personality of Australians and so on. And through that, exciting,
person,
friendly,
right?
warm, perfect for Gen Z and for millennials, right? I mean, everything we're talking about.
Okay,
Very well.
okay. So basically, you took this from 15 million to 75. 15 million is really nothing. I mean, so basically, from 15 to 75 in 2 years, that's a pretty good ramp. What now? What do you think? How big do you see the opportunity being for Future of Cheese? Because you have multiple SKUs, right? You got the butter, you got cheese, you got what else? You got Matt. You got a bunch of other things coming out also, right?
Yeah, the team is already working on the next round of products, but I'm excited. We have a couple things coming up very soon. Some new product launches, that we've discussed. So yeah, we're rounding out what that offer is, filling out the SKU base. So yeah, very very exciting.
Okay, so Yossi, so what is the plan to get the Future of Cheese, the brands, to get to 100 million? How long would it take to get to 100 million revenues?
Very hard
Next
to
week?
answer a question like that specifically in terms of years, but I'll tell you this. Group Danone, okay, a company that I know quite well. Group Danone has a stated goal. Okay, this is a stated goal from already 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I think, when plant-based wasn't as explosive as it is today. Their stated goal is they want to be €5 billion, I should say, which is about $6 billion of plant-based products by 2025. That's what they've said.
$5 billion?
$5 billion. That's what
Hold on
they're.
a second. You're telling me Danone, which I mean, they understand. I mean, they know what this business is about, right? They're saying that they could do 5 billion in plant-based,
and that doesn't mean they're going to themselves do
right.
5 billion
Acquisition.
plant-based, right? Could be through acquisition, and I'm quite confident it will be through acquisition. They've stated that they want to have $5 billion of their revenue coming from plant-based. And just to give you a side example, which is not quite plant-based, they made an acquisition of White Wave. White Wave makes a lot of the creamers, and they paid, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 years ago, they paid $12 billion.
Billion or million?
Billion.
And I never heard of this company. What is it?
White Wave is Silk. It's the brand Silk. So it's very well known.
I've seen that. It's like a what do you call it?
It's almond milks. They do yogurt. They're
soy, right? It's made of soy or something.
Well, they do soy. They do almond. They do oat. All the alternative beverages.
Okay, so
You'll see their commercials on TV.
That was sold for some $12 billion.
$12 billion by them.
How much revenue were they doing?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. But they're a tremendous company. As Matt says, they're doing all the alternative silk and a lot of alternative dairy drinks, as well as dairy creamers. But I think this was even before everybody was talking plant-based. They wanted to diversify. This was pretty much before.
I remember seeing this years back. It came like the silk. It was like I think I tried it once. It tasted pretty good. It was like a
we sell it in our stores. It's a well-known brand. It's one of the what I would call pioneer brands.
Pioneers, okay. But this was before the word plant-based. This was like completely.
It was before it was hot.
Yeah, it was just a niche, kooky thing. Okay, so now.
But just speaking to that, Jack. Sorry, quickly, but also like Danone also just made a recent acquisition in the last, I think, 12 months. They bought a company, and I mentioned this previously on your program, called Earth Island Foods, which I know very well. And there was no publicly disclosed numbers because Earth Island is a privately held company. But I can tell you, it is a big company that they acquired. We know it well because they do vegan mayonnaises, they do vegan yogurt, vegan cheese, vegan sauces, a whole bunch of plant-based categories that they have. So Danone acquired them. And then I mentioned previously as well in this program, Saputo, who's a large Canadian based dairy conglomerate, bought a company called Boot Island Foods out of Scotland that manufactures a product called Cheese that we carry in our stores. That's very well known. It's a plant-based cheese company. They do cream cheese, sliced cheese, things like that. And they bought them with another company. So they didn't separate the two transactions, but they bought that and another company for 180 million. And this is a small company based out of Scotland. So you get to see, the example that Yossi made. Danone is well known of dabbling in and stepping into the plant-based market. And like I've mentioned, all these dairy-based companies are looking to diversify their portfolios. They have to have an answer to plant-based. And so whether that's plant-based beverages being the almond, soy, oat milk, whether that's the yogurt category, Yossi mentioned it, coconut, soy, almond, whether that's in the cheese category, like us, whether that's in the butter category like us, they're all looking to grow through acquisitions because it's not easy for these companies to greenfield a brand. It's especially in the plant-based sector where there's a lot of loyalty to the brand. People want to know how these brands started. What is their passion? Why did they start? It's not
They don't
easy
want
for
they don't want to buy like a corporate big. They don't want the corporate. They
Exactly.
want the more of that artisanal.
Yes.
That more of that. Yeah.
And you see it more and more with these big companies too. They keep the existing management teams because they want the authenticity of the brand. They don't want it to become a corporate brand because then they lose their core audience. So you're seeing all these companies, the major dairy producers, step into the plant-based space. And I've mentioned it as well in this program before. We speak about Afram Pristine, one of the co-founders, as like Yossi mentioned, at Maître Fromager and his experience in the cheese market. But let's not underestimate, he's dealing with all these dairy-based companies. He's one of the largest importers of specialty cheese in Canada. Okay, so he knows all these people. And part of the attraction for me when I looked at this acquisition was those connection to those companies that want to have not only a great product, but great spokespeople. And when you speak about Afram and Craig as the co-founders, you can't speak about better people to promote the brand and be the spokespersons for the brands. I'm sure Yossi can, to try and put a value on that. I don't even want to guess what the number would be if you had to go out and hire people with that sort of experience to promote a brand. So, that combination with number one, their experience, number two, the quality of the products, and number three, being in a hot sector, it was just a tremendous opportunity to tap into.
Okay. Wait, so Yossi, so what I want to ask you is what is where do you see future of cheese? Like, okay, so you're a marketing guy, right? So you do these like matrices of whatever the product. So where does future of cheese fit in? Like, what are the competitive advantages? Or maybe disadvantage. Well, let's talk advantages. Let's talk about the disadvantages also. What's the market like? How does it fit in for the U.S. market? Let's say.
When I think about the U.S. market, I think a very big, a whole bunch of things that I see as sort of competitive points of differences for this product versus some of the others. I mean, first of all, is taste. If you go into the supermarket, you can taste what some of these artificial butters, or they didn't call them plant-based a few years ago, but whatever they're called. You look at the ingredient panel, they're loaded with stuff that it's very hard to know even what they are. A lot of saturated fats, right? Or a lot of ingredients you don't really know what they are. You can't pronounce the ingredient names. Or there's 25 ingredients. Then there's a lot of chemicals in the product. This is something that's generally so far, it's 3 or 4 ingredients. Very simple. Simple ingredients, by the way, in the United States. I've already worked on a number of brands over the last couple of years. Simple ingredients is often a great competitive point of differences these days for the same reasons that we spoke about before. People are carefully considering what they're putting inside themselves. They want to be healthier, again, especially the millennials, and even the baby boomers who are getting older, who know what's going on. They want to be very careful, right? So I think that's a very big point of difference, the simplicity of the ingredients in a product like that. Second of all, another very big advantage is taste. Everybody can say they taste great, but do they really taste great? One of the things I've been thinking of from a marketing perspective that we hope to be able to do, is to be able to sample a product like this, to be able to get it out there, whether it's in supermarkets, whether it's at marathons, wherever that might be, where you can do that, or put it in ways that COVID is not an issue. You put it in a box where it's being delivered to your house. Other groceries are being delivered to your house. Things like that, to get it into as many mouths as possible. Because once people get a taste of this, it's incredible. I mean, again, a lot of the other ones, they're okay. And you expect that when you take a product that's plant-based or that's not for real,
there'll be a sacrifice.
Give up a little, right? There's a little bit of a sacrifice there. To me, what's so amazing about this is that this brand, you can actually have it and taste it and eat it, and you're giving up nothing. There's no sacrifice at all. And I think that's going to be a big advantage. I think early on, the focus is going to be more for people who are vegan or people who are more health conscious. But I think as the critical mass begins to grow for a product like this, the ability for them to go anywhere, right, and tell people, look, health is important to you. Taste is important to you. Maybe the other ones or some other products don't taste great. Here's a product that can give you the same benefits from a taste perspective. It tastes just as good, but it's much healthier. So it's very healthy, and it happens to taste great. So you can eat it on anything, and you're not sacrificing an iota when you have it.
Is the butter and the cheese, is it actually like, are there less calories? Is it less, like, what's the comparison versus the real deal?
I don't know all the specifics. You know, Matt, maybe you want to jump in. I know that there is certainly the simplicity of ingredients, and in general, a lot of the ingredients are just healthier as a general rule. I mean, to speak to some specifics, I don't have those off the top of my head, but
yeah, from a nutritional panel standpoint, yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's something we could easily compare. But just speaking about ingredient profile, I think it is important to note, because it was one of the biggest knocks on like the Beyond Meats and Impossible Meats was, it's great that it's plant-based, but the question is it healthier? Because people got concerned. You look at the back panel of a Beyond Meat product, and it has 32 ingredients or something. Like it's a lot, and a lot of those like 15-letter words where you're like, I'm not sure what this is. And so there was a lot of initial press that came out about, is it really healthier in the end? And so when you talk about a simplified ingredient panel, it builds confidence with the consumer about, they know what they're putting in their body. Now, it's not to say that the things that are in the Beyond Meat are bad for you. A lot of people don't realize, and I give always the example to customers of sodium bicarbonate. Like, it sounds awful. Like, I'm not putting that in my body. It's poison, and it's baking soda. So, sometimes people need to understand, and, it's one thing, to go back to Organic Garage side, it's one of the first things we did is we published what we call a dump it list, which is an ingredient glossary of terms, so people understand, number one, what the ingredient is and whether it's approved or not to be in a product at Organic Garage. Because I gave the example of baking soda, and I asked a random person, hey, do you know what sodium bicarbonate is? They're like, no, I don't want to eat that. It sounds like it's going to poison me. I said, but you realize it's baking soda. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay, well, that's okay then. So we realized that very early on. And so I think, like I said, the Beyond Meat suffered from that a little bit until they explained what some of these actually, what are the kind of the uses of these items. But simplified ingredient panel goes a very long way in building consumer confidence about what is going into their body, and gives them confidence on purchasing a product that maybe they haven't tried before.
Jack, it's also all natural, right? It's organic, it's non-GMO, it's sustainably sourced. It's got a lot of the characteristics that people are looking for these days, right, in products. So it has a lot of that also, aside from the great taste and the fact that it's got good ingredients. It's got a lot of those interesting aspects to them that really make it special and stand out. And by the way, when you use it, it melts and it browns and it spreads just like real cheese. So it's got the feel as well. It's got the mouth feel and what you can do with it, the capabilities of what you can do with this product for cooking and baking. It really mimics what a lot of the real cheeses and other dairy products do out there in the world.
Okay. And so you basically, again, you've had 25 years experience in the dairy alternative, the whole market. So, if you had to rank this on a scale of 1 to 10, I want to put you on the spot here, Yossi. So on a scale of 1 to 10 being the best, where would you say future cheese, products are in terms of the market, like, compared to the competition?
I mean, if I didn't think this was a 9 or a 10, I never would have got involved with it. Does that help?
Okay.
I look at this and I say, okay, sure, there's things I can be involved with based on my dairy experience. And when I look at this with all these characters, one thing that I really love about this, probably more than anything, aside from the fact that it's a phenomenal product, the feel good to me about this that makes it really, really different is the fact that the product was created by one of the world's best and recognized cheesemakers, right? Afram Pristine, right? He's the only Canadian, right, that has this maître fromager designation, which is very hard to get. He has many, many years of cheese experience. So that's something I don't think anybody can say, right? You've got somebody with that kind of expert who lives and breathes cheese 24/7, has been doing that for much of his life. In addition, you have one of the Canada's top shelves, Craig Harding, who has a number of restaurants, all the metropolitan Toronto area. So it's really sort of chef inspired and chef created, right? And I think that's something that's very different. It's not something that some big company, produced and created in a lab and then they're selling it in the marketplace. This is a company that came from the passion and the feel of people who dealing with food all the time, and especially a master cheesemaker. I think that's a huge advantage that nobody else out there can really say. So to me, that's, of all the other things we mentioned, are all very important. But I think if the execution is good, this can be way up there. And I feel it's a 9 or a 10 potentially.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting. You touched on I guess I guess in marketing they call the kind of, is it the psychographic element? Like the story. This is the kind of the thing that it's sort of in the background of people. Like this is kind of the real thing that gets people excited. Okay. So how big? Well, okay. So you're saying now Danone is looking to do $5 billion in revenues in plant-based dairy products in the next basically 3 years, essentially.
Correct.
Because we're in 2002 now. They said 20. So in the next 3 years, they want to get to $5 billion with acquisitions or whatever. How big do you think Future of Cheese can be? Let's say, based on the resources or whatever. If maybe, how big do you think this can be in the next couple of years with the different products?
Man, it's hard to estimate. I can't see why it can't be a 6. Why it can't be over the 100. Certainly, you're getting up to the hundreds of millions of dollars. It has the potential to do that. And I think part of what makes it so interesting, and from all of my experience and working in big companies and acquisitions that I've been involved with, going both sides of the coin, the big companies, as good as they are, and I love the big companies, of course, and we did great work in big companies, but big companies are not designed to be nimble like the small companies. So when they're facing something like this, plant-based, to do something right, they've got cannibalization issues with their other products. Is this something that's going to take away from a regular dairy product?
It's hard for them to develop in-house.
Yeah, very hard to develop in-house. They're always nervous about what it might do to their current product line, right? So most of the last few years, what's happened, what I'm seeing happening, which was very different than 10 or 15 years ago, is the big companies are sort of ceding that, right, to the smaller companies and saying, well, we're going to wait for the small companies to sort of figure this out. We know it's important. We're just going to make acquisitions and we're going to buy those smaller companies. If we can do that, then we can grow without having to take the risk. Now, of course, what always happens is, what does the big company do when it buys the small company? The smart ones let the small company keep running like a small company, right? They don't try to get too involved or try to push sort of all of their ways to the small company, because that'll slow the small company down. But the good companies who do that well, they know to leave the small companies alone. So you got to hope that that's what happens with some of these acquisitions. But as Matt said before, they made a very, very, very nice acquisition, the sort of Earth Island, follow your heart, just 10 months ago or whatever it is. Group Danone did that. Again, there was no, they didn't disclose the price. But that's something that would be very nice for them. And I think that sort of gets them to their goal. And because Danone is looking to get to $5 billion, I think companies like Future of Cheese could very much be in the crosshairs of something like that.
So you think that Danone would pay $2, $3 billion for Future of Cheese?
I have no idea what they would pay. Even if it was, it's not just Danone. It's not just Danone. I'm not talking with any pride. I don't know. All I know what I read about Danone, because I haven't been there in quite a number of years. But they seem to be very hell bent, on getting to the $5 billion, because they know that part of the dairy market is moving in that direction. And if all they do is real dairy, they're going to lose out. They're going to lose market share because they don't have the plant-based dairy. That doesn't mean real dairy is not going to go away. It's still going to be there. It's going to be the predominant force. But it's hundreds of billions of dollars, globally, the full dairy market. So, what's a couple of billion, right? 10, 20, 30 billion in plant-based, even in the United States. Huge opportunity.
Well, we see with, what is it, Oatly. I think, Oatly now has their market value is, what is it? It's a couple billion right now, right? Oatly, which is oat milk, basically. That's what I have.
Yeah. And Jack, we're also seeing in the plant-based space, you're seeing kind of almost an in-between step where you're getting private equity stepping in and acquiring brands, because private equity is seeing the opportunity for the big boys. So they come in, they buy a relatively smaller company, pump a bunch of capital into it to pump up the sales, and then sell it off to a big boy like a Danone or a Saputo once it's much larger. So you're seeing sometimes even that in-between step before it even gets to a big boy. So yeah, the consolidation happening in the plant-based space is huge. Like it is only ramping up more and more. And just going back to Yossi's point, one thing that, you can put a value on hard numbers, sales and things like that. What it's always difficult to put a number on is the brand and the people behind the brand. And I've stressed this before, and Yossi, as a marketing person, knows better than anybody, but that story behind the brand of the founders, very hard to put a value on, and it's very unique. It is uh, very rare to come
Right.
across that level of expertise. So it's a very, very important factor when factoring the value, the true value of the brand. So yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting called more, just to sort of support what Matt just said. I'm probably getting more phone calls now when I'm talking to food companies in this whole plant-based, genre than virtually any topic I can ever remember at all in the last 10 years. And many of these companies, they're dreaming, or they're going to change the world, or they're growing some, they've got some greenhouse growing under, Times Square, and they're going to change the world. But very often I look at what they've got, and I say, I mean, I don't know there's nothing specific. There's nothing special. Anybody could really do that. I think what Matt said before about the fact that you've got the Maître de Fromage, right, in Afram, and you've got Craig Harding, who's the famous chef in Canada. You've got those two sort of celebrities, who are on the air, who are talking about this, and they're well known, certainly there. They could become well known in the United States as well. That's a very unique advantage, I think, that Future of Cheese has, that in addition to the other things we talked about, that make it really well positioned, I think, to really grow dramatically. The same way Impossible, Beyond and Impossible grew very dramatically.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about it, like if somebody would have told me, I don't know, a couple of years ago, whatever, like Impossible Meat like I would have thought this was crazy. I mean, I still haven't tasted their product, but Matt, believe it or not, I'm not really into the plant-based stuff. I'm sorry. but listen, we work with companies.
But Jack, from an investor side,
I don't
look,
I don't,
a lot of people.
I mean, I look
a lot
at
of
it
people made a lot. Yeah, a lot of people made a lot of money off of Beyond.
Absolutely.
And anybody
yeah.
who's gotten in Impossible, I think it's still a private company, but they've done seed rounds and people have pumped a ton of money into that company.
I'm looking at it like, look, the thing is, in terms of the market themes, plant-based food is like this is going to be one of the big dominant themes for the next few years, at least. I think this is going to be, one of the big mega trends. Like really, it's one of these like, lifestyle and that things which are really going to make a huge impact. So I think it's definitely going to be.
It's not a fad. It is not a fad. It is a fundamental change in people's eating habits. And just to address quickly, one of your astute viewers, I posted a question on one of our previous interviews about, how do you separate yourselves from others who might be willing to copy you? Or they had mentioned,
That's
I think, white label at the time, private label. I mentioned at the time, I said, look, you can't stop people from duplicating a recipe. It doesn't mean it executes the same, and it doesn't mean that the people behind the brand are the same. That was always a key differentiator for me. Not only did we have great products, which, are not just easy to duplicate. You can't copy a product exactly, but it's what is the management team? What is the story behind it that builds in an emotional attachment to the consumer? And we have the best you could possibly get. So that to me is going back to Warren Buffett's, how do you create that insulating moat around your brand? I talked about it for Organic Garage, what sort of attributes we have, but around Future of Cheese, one of the core attributes is the management team. That you can't duplicate that. Like Yossi said, there's one Maître Fromager in Canada, and if not North America. So you can't duplicate things like that. That builds a transparency and an authenticity and sort of an experience behind the brand you can't find. So
I think the bottom line though is really, I mean, look, I mean, you have 4 stores. Soon there's going to be thousands of Organic Garage stores. So I think I've said it before on the program is, look, I mean, exactly what sells on the shelves, what takes, and you've seen every product out there in the category. So if Organic Garage is going to launch its own brand, its own products, obviously, you have, what you're doing. So it's like, I mean, there's a lot of thinking behind this. I know, so
yeah, it's not foreign to us. We're at the ground level. We're at the epicenter of the plant-based movement. I mean, we see things before they even hit the market, and bring that sort of intel as part of our contribution to the overall company is invaluable for, Craig and Afram and the team at Future of Cheese, charting the path for Future of Cheese to know what competitors are doing, what sizes are they, what flavors of cheese, what are the retail price points, what is the costing from the distributor, what are the ingredients in the item, all these things that we help provide as part of our contribution to the growth of the company. And yeah, so we're seeing it at the ground level.
It's so true. It's so true. The people, you're not meeting everybody here, but the management team is incredible. I mean, smart, very passionate about this brand. I mean, it's really, to me, it's kind of Future Cheese kind of at the cutting edge of the whole plant-based revolution, I think.
So Yossi, what is the game plan for the U.S. market? Like, when are you going to launch, and what kind of milestones can we expect? Like, which markets are you going to enter? Like, what is give us the story for the next couple of months? So what can we expect to see happen?
Well, I mean, I think that initially, really, it's really going to start off with sort of rolling out into Canada initially, very early on. I think very quickly we're going to be looking to sort of come to the United States. I think part of our role in the next, over the next few months is going to figure out, okay, what are the ideal supermarket chains that would be ideal for this? And the United States, different than Canada, different than Europe, where the markets tend to be much more concentrated. There's 2 or 3 or 4 major retailers. The United States, as you well know, has got 300 retailers across the country. There's 10 mega ones, but there's many of them, of course, like Whole Foods, which has a specific sort of niche in an area like this. You've got other big supermarket chains like Sprouts, or Gelson's on the West Coast, who have a very health-oriented view of things, and who could potentially be the type of retailers to look at first. Maybe yes, maybe no. I think part of what we need to do is figure out, okay, where are the best places to start off first, who would most appreciate products like this, which part of the country would be people most appreciate something like that. And then really we're working on plans. We have already some of the initial plans in terms of, how do we build brand awareness, of this, so people become aware of this around both Canada and then in the United States. How do you get trial? As you spoke about a little bit earlier, you want people to try it. I think once people try something like this, I mean, it's incredible because they taste it. They say, this tastes like a regular cheese. And of course, when this rolls beyond butter and cream cheese and starts to get into, bries and mozzarella or other things that are being looked at, that could be tremendous. Consumers will say, my gosh, mozzarella, I always wanted to have something that tasted really great, but was healthier for you. And these are all the kinds of things from a new product perspective that the company is thinking about. And I think that has also tremendous potential to really grow from a revenue perspective and to help them sort of take a large part of that market. I think it's also going to be important to make sure the retailers understand clearly what this is, right? What are the key points of differences? How are we different from other retailers? We spoke about that a little bit earlier in the call. And of course, there are many major differences. But initially, it's going to be about figuring out who the retailers are that we want to focus on, in which parts of the country. How do we get awareness of this brand, and then how do we get sampling? Once you get into people's mouths, the more mouths you get into, the higher degree of likelihood that these people are going to say, this is amazing. I got to get this again. Where do I get this again? Type of thing. And that could really snowball into a tremendous growth story and valuation story.
Okay, so I'm sure you're not going to give us all the secrets of the whole marketing plan right on this call, because there's probably a lot of things that are proprietary. But what about restaurants? Like getting into like restaurant chains? Because I noticed, like, I've seen on the menu in restaurants recently, like they have an Impossible Burger. Like, I wouldn't eat it, but like they have it. It's like a brand thing, but they have it as like on the menu next to a regular burger. So what is the possibility of getting this into restaurant so that people can have whatever, I don't know, they're going to have a burrito, whatever it is, and they're going to have the cheese in there that's the future of cheese and not the regular cheese or whatever.
First of all, I think an interesting thing you said
there's
earlier.
A lot of people who can't eat regular cheese. There's a lot of people who like cheese, but they really can't eat it.
Absolutely. They're lactose intolerant, right?
Yeah.
They don't like the taste of cheese or whatever it might be, and they actually can't have it. I mean, we have family members like that, who can't, or are lactose intolerant. This is like perfect for somebody like them. But you don't necessarily have to be a lover or into plant-based. I mean, I'm personally not personally into plant. It doesn't mean I don't eat it. I do eat sometimes things that are plant-based, because now I'm discovering that in certain categories and with certain brands, you can get the same experience like you can with a future of cheese product. So I think in terms of restaurants, there's no question that's a big opportunity. In some ways, the credibility there is even greater, because you're talking to people who are, the chef when you talk about that it's chef created and it's a maître de fromage created, the chef can relate to that because they're chefs, right? Or they own the restaurant.
That's a very good point. Because that's a very good point.
So food service could potentially be, even bigger than retail. A lot of what I'm focused on retail, but I think from the standpoint of food service, you've got a tremendous upside opportunity. I mean, realize, again, I've done some work in food service. Part of the trick in food service is to be able to explain to the restaurants or the restaurant chain how this is going to drive more traffic into your restaurant, right? If you're offering the Impossible Burger or you're offering substitutions for dairy, right? And especially if this becomes a big brand that people start hearing about, by just having this in the restaurant, it's credibility right there. And you're going to get some people, either because they're lactose intolerant or they want plant-based, are going to go to the restaurant just for that reason. And you're going to have others who may want real cheese, but they're going to be impressed by the fact that this restaurant carries some alternatives for people who want plant-based. So I think that's where the restaurant world and the food service world is going these days. These types of options to be able to offer to your customers things that are plant-based or lactose intolerant, for people who are lactose intolerant or just want plant-based because it's better for them. That's certainly a trend that's starting to roll pretty fast. And I think it's going to become almost something restaurants have to do in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think we'll be positioned very well for something like that.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, so it's something that really is that they're going to have a plant-based dairy option on their menu. So like they're going to have a instead of plant-based cheese, but whatever it is, as part of the thing, as part of it.
Okay. Yeah, Gen Z is already demanding. Gen Z wants many of those consumers in that demographic group are already they're sold on it. I mean, that's what they want. And they want that. So restaurants that are, or bars or places where people are eating and they're very young oriented already. A lot of them are already starting to move in this direction.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay. Yes, I want to ask you, I went to your website, was it Oxford Hill? I mean, you have Oxford Hill partners, right? And I saw you have some really impressive clients. And it's the whole like Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies. Now you also worked with IAC, Barry Diller. This is what did you do over there? I know it's not really that related, but it's kind of related.
Barry Diller was interesting because that's where I kind of, I guess, cut my teeth on digital. Before that, I had come from the world of very traditional marketing, Danone and Kraft. If you wanted to do something digital, it had to be approved all the way up, way up at the top of you couldn't just put a recipe on the website. Somebody high up there had to approve it. It was a completely different world. But the big struggle that was going on in 2000, sort of after the internet boom and bust was, am I really making money? I mean, I wouldn't even say it was at that point. By 2005, 2006, I think most companies said, I have a website. Am I making money with this? How do I make more money with this? What else could I be doing? I have a website. What else needs to happen? What is social media? At that point, social media barely existed. I know about email, but I don't really know what to do with it. So I had been involved with these various dealer companies, predominantly a company called Entertainment. Entertainment was a division of IAC. And working with them, they had their famous product was something called the Entertainment Book. This was a book with coupons and discounts, and we were able to successfully sell the company to Barry Diller. And then we were very closely aligned with Expedia and Ticketmaster and Match.com and many of his companies. And he's a very smart guy, right? And he's done a lot of very good work in terms of working digital. And I got very involved in how do we digitize a lot of this? How do we do more digitally? And then I started consulting when I moved into the world of consulting. I was helping these mostly large companies at that time figure out what's next for digital, because you had the 40 and 50-year-old CEOs who didn't really know much about digital. They knew a lot about strategy and about planning, but then you had the 25-year-olds who knew about digital but didn't know anything about strategy, right? And you would sit in a meeting and they would say, oh, there's SEO and SEM, and everybody was going like this, and nobody really understood what the heck was going on. So somebody that I kind of took my role as, I've been in both of these worlds, right? At the senior levels doing marketing plans and strategies, and now I've done a lot of digital work. I can kind of bring those two things together. So a lot of my work with the very big companies revolved around digital strategy, which is what happened with a lot of these clients.
Is there a digital strategy for Future of Cheese, or like in terms of like social media, like influencers, stuff like that? Like, what is there a separate separate thing there?
Sure. Part of today, a lot of my work today is with small to medium sized companies. Whether it's digital strategy, whether it's overall marketing strategy, whether it's what's my value proposition, who are we? What's our competitive point of difference, which is a big issue for a lot of companies. You don't really know how are they different from the other guy, right? Today, when you do a marketing plan, or at least the kinds of marketing plans that we're doing here for Future of Cheese, all that is kind of part of a marketing plan. So one element, one component of the marketing plan is the digital strategy, right? And then, of course, gets into, without getting into anything too proprietary or anything, so, we're getting into, of course, things like influencers, like social media, like email. I mean, email today is one of these things that, kind of gets a bad rap. A lot of people, social media is everything, and email hasn't changed at all. I think in many ways, email has gotten more popular and stronger. Why? Because it used to be you checked your email on your computer every day, right? Now you're opening up your phone 30 times, 50 times a day, 100 times a day. I don't even know what the latest number is. So there's much more opportunity to read those emails, right? So for people who say email is dead,
they can get offers. They get Future of Cheese butter offers in their
exactly. Right, things like that. Exactly.
Okay? So I want to kind of to wrap up, like, what needs to happen for, again, like, I think I kind of touched on it, but what needs to happen, like, to get, like, what's the first milestone? Is it, I mean, 100 million is not going to happen. It's not going to happen by February, right? It's going to take a while to get to. But what are the milestones? And maybe Matt, you want to add, but like, what needs to happen for Future of Cheese to be a massive success in the U.S. market? Like, what is, is there look, or what's in your way? Is there a capital constraint? Is it like what obstacles are there? Like, what is there anything that could stop you from being $100 million brand?
Well, a couple of things I'll just add, before Yossi maybe adds to the overall topic. So one of the biggest things we want to do is we want to fill out our product portfolio. And I think Yossi is definitely in agreement with, when you're looking at entering the US market, you want to enter with a compelling, product list. And for us, we're excited. Like I just mentioned, we have a couple of good announcements coming up about product launches to continue to fill out the product portfolio and things that we're working on for early next year, which is literally just a few months away, but to continue to fill out that product portfolio, because I think when we enter the US, we want to have, a decent sized product portfolio to present.
How many products is, when you say portfolio, we're talking about like how many?
I would say anywhere between 5 and 10 SKUs you want to be at. Okay, so that's key. We launched with 2 SKUs of butter. We have some press news that's coming up that will continue to add to that product portfolio, and then stuff early, in Q1 of this coming year that will continue to fill it out as well. But I think 5 to 10 SKUs is a compelling product portfolio
to start. Absolutely,
to start, but to enter into a market that gives you some insulation and sit with a retailer and give them some meat on the bone, so to speak, to list product. And I think that's kind of the initial focus operationally for the company. And some of that will come through our domestic launches here in Ontario, and then a national launch in Canada as well. And as well as an online launch, which we talked about online and digital. We have plans for an online store to help satisfy markets where a bricks and mortar store maybe doesn't currently have product, so that we can get product to consumers. And I think that will be the impetus to start those conversations with retailers and distributors in the US, and finding those retailers that link up with kind of, who are driving, the interest in plant-based. And Yossi named some great ones, like a Whole Foods of the world, 450, 500 stores in the US, a Sprouts, a Gelson's, any of those retailers that have a strong, I would say organic kind of mindset, is focused on that kind of industry and that sort of consumer, that will match up very well. And from a social media perspective, just in terms of publicity, we talk about what is your influencer strategy and how you get the name up. We have 2 of the best influencers as the co-founders of the company. We forget about their following and how they speak to the people that watch them. So I think some of those are the main catalysts. The one thing about a US launch, and I can speak from brands that I've seen, Canadian brands that have entered the US, is when you have a compelling product portfolio, and kind of those building blocks established in the company, it doesn't take much to balloon very fast in the US because of the size of the market. And so I think from my experience and what I lend in terms of my own viewpoint with the company is making sure that we have that strong product portfolio, we have those building blocks in place, because it won't take long with the sort of, kind of media personalities we have with Afram and Craig to help get that word out very fast, and for it to be a very compelling proposition for a retailer to pick up on, to push the product. So from that side, it's very exciting, because once that ball starts rolling, it starts rolling very, very fast.
But the main thing is, I think also it's important maybe to emphasize is that Future of Cheese is, the brand, you're going to have many products, many SKUs under this. It's not just, one product. It's not just, I think, what it is. I think maybe Yossi, maybe you can comment this, because when people say Future of Cheese as, okay, this is going to be the big thing for the company, I think a lot of investors think, okay, they only have one cheese. They only have like one thing of cheese. That's the whole. But in reality, you have. I think you're going to have very shortly 5 to 10 SKUs, and then at some point it could be, I don't know, whatever the market could support. I'm sure there could be, various. I don't know. Could be actually a good question. How many different products can you have? Is it 20? I mean, what's the market?
And you can have a lot of
look. Before Yossi just answers that, I just want to put it in perspective. People look at the mozzarella category. So you develop a recipe for mozzarella. That's not just one SKU. You have mozzarella block, you have mozzarella ball, you have you can get into sort of gourmet mozzarellas that are the it's a dairy base, but it's a buffalo style mozzarella, that people are used to kind of in the jar that's in the liquid. Mm-hmm. You have shredded mozzarella. So when you talk about developing a recipe for a core item, so then take a look at mozzarella and cheddar, or feta, and how many variations you have within creating that one recipe. And then you start to understand how you can fill out a portfolio very quickly, very fast. So even within the butter category, look, we launched a basic salted and unsalted, but you look at flavored butters, you look at butter sticks, you look at, there's all sorts of variations. You look at the cream cheese category. Cream cheese is not just one SKU. How many flavors of cream cheese can you have? So when we talk about developing a product portfolio, people get stuck on, well, is it one cheese? Well, no. But if we develop a mozzarella recipe, it's not just going to be one SKU. It could be 6 or 8 SKUs just out of that one mozzarella recipe. So that's how you balloon a portfolio very quickly, and have a very compelling offer for retailers. Sorry, Yossi.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the U.S., is 330 million people. And what Matt's saying is exactly right. The portfolio could be dozens of products going down the road. And if you tie that back to what we spoke about before in our discussion about digital, right, the key is going to be we talked earlier about how do you get these people to try? How do you get it in as many mouths as possible? Because once they get a taste of this product, they're going to say, this is amazing. And they're going to be looking out for what's next. How do you get the loyalty, right? Once these people taste it, if you get 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, you get the trial. They go back to stores, they buy it a second time. And now you have a calendar that you're rolling out new products, whether it's mozzarella or different variations and so on. If you could build a rapport with these people through email, right, through a loyalty program, and they're aware every time you come out with another new type of a cheese or another shape of the cheese, or it's shredded, right, it's grated, or whatever it is, and they're into you because they enjoyed the first product, and now they're buying 10 of your products because they love everything you make.
And telling their friends.
Right, and telling their friends, right? Tell a friend and so on and so forth. Imagine what the revenue opportunity is from that. That's just by, even if you got a fraction of the U.S. population doing that, and you start building that relationship, and all these people are the first to know through email or through social media that you've just come out with another brie and a shredded mozzarella and whatever it might be coming down the road. Every 2-3 months, you got another product, and they're buying them. Right? And I've seen this happen with brands, and they're into it. And these people are going to be into it, I believe.
So, it's interesting. I noticed a couple of times, you mentioned sampling, the product trials. So you're focused on the kind of this blocking and tackling part of it, right? Getting people to try first is important.
Well, that's part of the strategy. I mean, that's not the only thing, but I would say that's a key. When you have a product that really, really tastes good, right? The most important strategy, probably, besides the product strategy and your positioning, is going to be trial, right? Because all you got to do is get it into their mouth for the first time, boom, and you're off and running with those people. A lot of other products don't have that advantage. If they're just sort of mediocre, so what's the big deal? They taste it once, they have 10 other options. What do they need? Your option. But if you got the right positioning and it really tastes great and it has health benefits and all the other things on top of that, and it was created by chefs and all the other things that we talked about, you have a tremendous potential recipe for success in something like that, especially if you can keep people coming back. And they will keep coming back because it's a great product.
I think it's interesting. The more, and again, as the product portfolio, as you build it out with different SKUs, different product, whether it's the cream cheese, butter, all these different things, each one of them could be, a massive success as like a niche thing or whatever. And that leads to the, so it becomes a success cycle.
Well,
Absolutely.
it builds on one another. Yeah, it builds on one another. And Yossi's right. You speak a lot about brand building by building a loyal base, because that's how, through word of mouth, they become loyal buyers. So anything you launch, they immediately will pick up on. And so you have pre-built-in success for any SKUs you launch, and it's easy to extrapolate out numbers when you're looking at kind of what a new SKU launch will do to your sales trajectory, because you have a built-in audience. So, and we speak about, just going back to influencers and stuff, most companies have to hire celebrities to promote their products. We have corporate videos, with Craig and Afram in a test kitchen, with Craig cooking with the product. You see all those chef shows on Food Network where they show like the close-up of the skillet and people, frying stuff or what. That's Craig. Like, Craig is the one who does all that stuff. So he can show the consumers through a transparency of, guys, this is how you use it. This is how you have this recipe. This is how you used to use the other ingredients. Here's how you substitute in future cheese ingredients. And here, I'm going to show you what it's like, so you can't put a price on that. I mean, that sort of connection with consumers, and we see it with social media, with videos, and how people latch on to that in terms of, being loyal to brands where they can see a video and be connected to it. The sort of videos that Afram and Craig can produce, I mean, if you were to go out and try and produce that yourself and hire the people, like, astronomical cost. This is all pre-built in as part of them being the co-founders.
Okay. Last question. I mean, actually, two last questions, because we're kind of running out of time. Okay, so this is very interesting. Are there any obstacles to get into U.S. distributors? I mean, how is it? Because I mean, people might think, is it difficult? Is it easy? What needs to happen to get into the U.S. market? Once you have this portfolio of, let's say you got 5-10 SKUs, you're getting close. Once you have that portfolio, how do you get into, like Yossi said, Gelson's and Whole Foods, all that stuff?
Yeah. One of the biggest things I'll just say from a retailer point of view is our initial focus will be is to get a retailer on board, because there's nothing better that a distributor loves than when you go to them and say, ABC retailer's picking it up, we need a distributor, you distribute to them, because it's pre-built in dollars for them. Like, that's a very simple story. And what Yossi mentioned that's much different than in the US and Canada is you get even one retailer in the US to pick it up, it's big. There are so many regional retailers in the US that have between 500 and 1,000 stores. You compare that to Canada, we have 3, so that is the key thing for us, is to have that product portfolio to present to a retailer, get one key retailer to sign on, then it's a snowball from there, because as soon as you can go to a distributor and say ABC retailer's picking it up, the distributor picks it up, that distributor distributes to thousands of other retailers, smaller, anywhere from 0 to 100 stores, and also other big boys. Then you go to the other big boys and say, look, ABC distributor just picked it up, we're listed with them, so it's easy for you to get the products, and then you're off to the races. So that is the short strategy, if I were to really distill it down. And you have two better pitchmen than Afram and Craig to sit in a meeting with a retailer and hear their passion and their story and why they're so enthusiastic and why they're going to pump it out to their audiences for a retailer to get excited about it. So it's pretty simple in terms of that, distilling it down. I'm not sure,
You have
Yossi, if you have anything to add.
I just realized you mentioned having a retail. Do you have like a specific retailer in mind, like a U.S. retailer, which would be like that first, like that marquee, that lead retailer to kind of launch the product with, to get the distributors excited?
Well, I think Yossi mentioned a few good ones, and I think it will follow along that path. I don't want to say we've zoomed in on one specific, um, but that would be the path we choose. You want to find retailers that match, your consumer, because it's going to lead to sales success, and you want that. You don't want to listen in a retailer where maybe it's not catering to your ideal customer, and the retailer isn't happy with the execution, and then it doesn't work out. So you focus on the retailers that are fitting your ideal demographic, and you build from there, because the other retailers will pick up once you build brand awareness, because they're going to want a product that consumers are asking for. So that's kind of the strategy when it comes to it.
Okay. One audience question, if we can sneak this in. Okay. A couple of people have asked, production capacities, timeline for the different products. What's the production time capacity? I'm like, how much butter and cheese can you produce? Can you produce, I don't know, $10 million worth of product this month?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to specify an exact capacity at this standpoint, but all I can say is we've spent a lot of time being able to scale the business as the business grows. Some of the death knells for a lot of companies, and I've seen it firsthand, is they go out and they have to raise all this capital. They got to open up a manufacturing facility. The facility has way more capacity than they'll ever need, and yet they put out all the money to build it, not being able to fully utilize it. We've taken the reverse standpoint, which is let's keep the capacity tied to the retailer participation in the sales. We're always one step ahead. Let's make sure we're prudent with our money. We're not going out there and raising money and building a facility that we don't need at this standpoint. We're focused much more on the angle of co-packers to help scale the business, because it limits capital requirements. And once again, it focuses Craig on Afram on what they do best, which is recipe development and promotion rather than production. Let's work with somebody who knows production, and that's their business. So yeah, I wouldn't want to name a specific number at this standpoint.
But it's not an issue, basically. In other words, the capacity
it's not an
production
issue.
is not an issue.
It's not an issue. It's not an issue.
Last question: what kind of news flow can we expect to see, from the future of cheese business, new products, etc., new store over the next, into the end of the year, next 6 weeks?
Yeah, we have a robust schedule, so it's super exciting. I mentioned we're going to have a few product launches definitely before the end of the year, coming up very shortly, that I'm excited about. We have some exciting partnership, things, specific brands, stores, retailers, food service side, brands and things picking up on the future of cheese products, the future of butter products we just launched. So I'm excited for some of that stuff coming up. So, it's all building the story. And I've said this before on your program, Jack, and it's important for investors who are evaluating us, from an investment kind of side of the businesses. We're at the starting line. Like it's only up from here. So that is what makes it such a compelling investment story, and to get in, on the opportunity, is because it's only going to be new SKUs that are being launched. It's only going to be more retailers picking up on the brand. It's only going to be more partnerships coming up in the future. So that is what is so exciting. This isn't, we're not 5 years in and kind of the story's plateaued. We're at the start line, and I'm super excited. It's what keeps me energized, and the whole entire team energized. It's just, positive news after positive news. So, it's very exciting.
And one of the things that struck me a couple of weeks ago, when the product was put out there at retail, right? How many hours did it take for it to sell out? What, 48 hours or something like that? I mean, just the first batch, everybody was jumping to grab it.
Yeah.
So the market is excited for the product, which is a good start. So, yeah. All right, guys. On that note, I want to thank you, Yossi. I want to thank you for. I know you had a cold. You've been a good sport putting up with an hour interview here. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you in the next live stream.